Okay, welcome everybody. Maik, Professor Shane. With the huge success that was the Hypertrophy Seminar, we decided to do an encore. And now the people come to a gym, any gym, this gym, there's two things they want. They want to get bigger or leaner. So today is the how to get bigger. Right. So just a brief outline as to what you can expect today. So as always, we want to end the confusion. So today we talk about muscle growth. There's three mechanisms thereof, and how do they apply for your training? What can you make out of them in the gym, group the exercise and so forth. And then the second part would be obviously nutrition, because there's a lot of misconceptions as to walking, how much should you eat, and so on and so forth. So when you go out of here, when you download link, you should be fully equipped to get huge. With that, we'll have to share.
So, kicking things off, we look at muscles under a microscope. Muscle cells are a little bit different to other cells in the body. So, they're long fibers with multiple neurons, cell nucleus. So, the muscle fibers themselves are innervated by a motor unit, and when an impulse is sent from the nervous system, that causes muscles to contract. Okay, so obviously that's the whole point of what we're doing in the gym. We're trying to get muscles to contract. If I do this, I can get the muscle to contract on its own, but if I do that, it's probably not enough of a stimulus to actually grow some muscle. So we need to think about some other things if we want to actually get some growth.
To break it down for the gym bros of us, muscle growth is essentially like changing the US Senate. Unless you have 2/3 and something absolutely impressive, it's not going to happen. Body does not want to grow muscle per se, right? So now we're going to teach you what to do. Some fiber types.
Yeah, we just take a quick look at the fiber types. So, blood fibers are considered slow twitch. So, endurance athletes are going to use a lot of slow twitch type blood fibers when they're going through like a marathon or whatever. A sprinter will use like type 2 fibers, which are larger, more they're larger, more explosive and powerful muscle fibers. So those are generally the fibers that we're trying to engage in bodybuilding.
Now those are for you and us were months, okay? But 50%, which is why we don't really use the marathon, and we're not going to powerlift this interval. So right, we have some in the middle, which also has certain meanings for our training.
So when we talk about fiber recruitment, it's, we're trying to recruit both slow and fast twitch muscle fibers. There's a thing called size principle, which means that we actually go from progressively the smaller motor units up to the larger ones. So we can't just pick up the dumbbell and immediately engage all of those fast twitch muscle fibers. It actually takes a little bit of time in order to engage those fibers and a certain threshold of resistance.
So I want to reiterate this because this is often misconstrued. People think they pick up weight and the type 2 fibers fire right away. That is not true unless you are a freak, in which case they can develop it. Most of us are using our type 1 fibers, and as they fatigue, type 2 fibers coming. That also means that if you're doing very few reps, you're not going to stimulate all the fibers. Okay?
Yeah, for those of us who are active athletes, it's just very difficult to actually be able to do that. So we need those kind of longer sets to get more of those muscle fibers.
So this is really the meat and potatoes of the training. There are three mechanisms of growing muscle, right? And paying attention, metabolic stress, and muscle damage. Anybody who has trained here with us or watched our videos must have heard about tension because we harp on that so much. That's because it's the most important factor of muscle growth.
But the first there, what was Maik, that was his day one, tension.
So tension is very simple. The way you're running a muscle through, let's say, concentric, and then you go into eccentric, and you might even have this signature, right? So as you produce that tension in the muscle, that's what we're referring to.
It's tension is just simply any load that causes the muscle to have to exert force to overcome its resistance. And so with bodybuilding repetitions, where there's nearly always a concentric and eccentric. If you're thinking of like more explosive sport movement, like you might only have like the concentric, whereas that lowering and allowing the muscle to stretch under load is a very important part of the muscle building process. So, what are the most important applications of mechanical tension?
Yeah. So the tension in training requires, and it's really not that complicated. So if you think about it, each muscle has insertion origin. You have to shove them together. Logically speaking, only one can move. So bicep, this moves, but if they're both one, I can't bring in tension, okay? So you must keep the tension on the muscle. That also means two things. You need to know which muscle you're trying to train in the exercise. Get to them later. And secondly, in certain instances, it can mean that blocking out is actually not that great for muscle use. Why? Because it's in the chest press. I'm like this, just stacking my bones, right? But my muscle doesn't really working. Whereas if I keep it like so, it's friendly on the joints, especially with older guys like this truly, and I create more tension and more work on the muscle at times. So tension, not to talk too much about time and tension, also means you control the movement and the rate, not the rate controls you. You know what you're trying to shorten, which muscle it is, and what you should feel it, and you never leave or lose that tension during the exercise.
So I think, just like quick demo, it's like we've all seen the guy in the gym, he's doing curls like this, okay? And so there's a really big temptation in the gym to just try to get more weights. Every week you're going up in weight. But in reality, a lot of the time people are actually doing less work, or doing less mechanical work, because as you're going through that, you're getting more and more momentum, you're taking that tension off the muscle.
Boy, let's see, dumbbell chest presses. That guy actually throws the weight up and then catches it on the way down. There's a large percentage of that set where the muscle doesn't do anything, right? The joints and ligaments are getting hammered, the entire set. But the pecs actually don't do much. So this guy is going to end up the shoulder problem, most likely, and under the lower pecs stand.
Very simple. So those are some of the applications of mechanical tension. We're going to cover more of the actual practical stuff as we go on. But the next thing is metabolic stress. So as muscles contract, they become fatigued and they produce more metabolic byproducts. So some of those byproducts are hydrogen, phosphate, lactate. So when people hear about lactic acid, everybody thinks that that's kind of like a very negative thing that we're trying to avoid. And actually, lactate is something that helps to buffer some hydrogen in the cell, which causes acidity. And that actually reduces the acidity.
The SP teacher was wrong. The PT got lactic acid is different. So Michael Phelps, he was on a bodybuilder. He produces nearly 100 grams of lactic acid, which allows him to perform at a higher level than most people. The ghetto workaround is this. If you supplements actually does something, it's disgusting.
Slightly quite delicious.
A teaspoon of baking soda provides that extra buffering for anything that's, shall we say, 35 to 50 seconds, which is your average set in training or underneath swimming and so on and so forth. You have to do it, it's just good.
And so one of the things with metabolic stress is that when you're doing lower rep sets with like higher weights, there's not generally enough time and attention to produce some of those metabolites. So metabolites are not the most important thing. They're probably like second after tension being like by far the most important. But if we're trying to kind of get as much as we can out of our training, we do want to produce some of that metabolic stress. So bodybuilding repetition ranges anywhere from like 8 to 30 reps. The caveat with that is that as you are going, let's say 8 to 10 reps, you probably don't need to go quite so close to failure as you do with those higher rep sets, like 20 to 30 reps.
And just failure means mechanical failure or formal failure. So it means I start, let's say, using my delt and curl. It does not mean I tore my elbow or something like a total failure. It just means other muscles are taking over. So when we use the term failure, that's what we're referring to.
Failure with quality forward, essentially.
So that's kind of what it's stress.
We have just a little bit on more in terms of like one of the reasons that people think that metabolic stress is important is that basically going back to our recruitment, it allows you to recruit more of those fast twitch, larger muscle fibers with relatively light weights. So as you get that burn, you're recruiting more of those fast twitch fibers, but it's much less tense than lifting with a heavy weight.
The risk of injury in the nervous system being fragile becomes low. So that's stress. Now we have muscular damage. Anybody, my generation, I would say, so who started lifting, we were always told you must tear the muscle in heavy weights so it gets bigger. So first of all, that's like a frightening idea. So like every Monday you tear your pecs, then on Tuesday you tear your lats. So that is obviously not the right stuff for things. So there is muscle damage, I mean that is true, but that does not mean you should always be on speed dial and DER when you lift. It also doesn't mean you have to lift so heavy. Because as we said, muscle damage is only one component. It's actually probably the least important component of muscle growth as to what we were told way back when we said just must tear the muscle.
Yeah, and so like another thing with muscle damage is that you can get a ton of muscle damage by, let's say, going for a run downhill. You wake up, your calves will be very, very sore the next day. But is that a potent stimulus for muscle growth? No. Nobody would really say that downhill running is going to get you feeling it, right? And so once you're kind of doing any kind of like new activity, that can cause some muscle damage, but in and of itself, it's not an important factor. So muscle damage is more of a byproduct of quality training. It's kind of hard to avoid like any small degree of muscle damage, but where the goal of training is not to damage the muscle, it's simply a byproduct of good quality training.
So to illustrate, if I took a Zumba class this afternoon, it would be frightening for everybody involved. But I would be like super sore, there would be lots of muscle damage, but it wouldn't be a better model instead. It would just be maintenance sensation for like the worst participant ever. But that's also what it is, right?
And so muscle damage on its own, probably not the most important factor. So training with light weights, greater manual tension can actually result in similar level of muscle damage at like that cellular level, which again is not this crazy tearing muscle fibers. It's more like little micro tears and so the other thing, muscle damage is lifting very heavy weights can damage a lot of muscle. It can also damage connective tissue, which is what we're trying to avoid with bodybuilding training.
So that's that. And then that's sort of an endless debate, right? It's sort of like meaning, let's say 30% of your one RPM or 80%. They both work. It's the short answer. When you train with lighter weights, you got to go closer to what we call mechanical failure. With heavier weights, you can probably stay away from that. It also depends in terms of where you're at right now, nutritionally, your cycle, and so on and so forth. So let's say if you have somebody who's preparing for an event and he's rather lean right now, he doesn't have much energy, that person probably shouldn't be training more that heavy. Should be sticking on 30-40%, they're close to failure. And somebody who's in a working phase can probably train heavier. But your weekly plan should always entail both.
Yeah, I think it's also it's exercise dependent as well. So like the last thing I would want to do is like try to load up like my 80% on a bicep curl, let's say. Whereas on a leg press with good form, you can go a little bit heavier, challenge yourself there, where you're actually you're essentially having more assistance from other muscle groups, which is legs, which is compounds, isolation. So
that was another question for a long time. Compounds being more than just exercise, isolation exercises. I was told, don't bother ever with isolation, just to the compounds and so on and so forth. And so the problem with compounds is that most people are really bad at them, right? So they get too fixated of moving the weight, and they're not really training muscle. Say, or see the guys like at the squat rack where we come to the good half, good morning, then yeah, so the weight goes up is a really a good idea, right? So with compounds, the idea is that so people do a pull-up, let's say, putting themselves up, they're not using their lats a whole lot. It's just like more of a jump up, wiggle up thing, right? That is not to say you should not do compounds, but a mix would be appropriate. So my personal belief is that a lot of people have problems maybe with the circle muscle, they can just start feeling all the while. Like in my case, it's the chest, right? So if I get a couple light sets and just like contracted fly or so in, and then go into a press and get much more out of the press from the chest activation than I would with them, right?
and I think actually I think a common point of confusion as well with compounds and isolations is that people think that compounds just means squat, bench, deadlift. A leg press is a compound exercise. So compound simply means you're using more than one muscle is involved in the action. So lat pull down, yes, the lats are prime movers, the biceps are contributing a little bit, or actually trying to minimize the contribution. So, some examples of compounds would be like squats, leg press, a dumbbell chest press, lat pull down, or the ends. Some isolations might be a leg curl, leg extension, bicep curls. So kind of focusing, as Mike said, sometimes it can be a very effective strategy to actually train the isolation first, and then maybe go into compounds. So you can do a stiff arm pull down, where we're isolating the lat, and then with the pull downs where we're getting more assistance from the bicep.
I guess the thing is that also remember it's not going to moving weights but training muscles, right? So if you're not using like a muscle train to do, you kind of waste it. So at the very least, the download will be what sound.
Okay, so compound exercises performed in like an appropriate way. I mean, effective tool for many, but they have some limitations. So some people struggle to recruit certain muscles in the spinal cord. Somebody who has like very powerful glutes, the spinal erectors, let's say if they're trying to train squats with the intention of building up their quads, they may end up, as Mike said, using the good morning technique, getting very little quad engagement, but they're very happy that they've increased their work max and squat. If that's what they're going for, that's fine, but if they're bodybuilding, maybe their time might be better spent elsewhere. So some compound exercises expose muscles to a lot of tension through a large range of motion. While others are only stressed for very little range. So think of like, the guys who would do like the rat pulls, put like 500 pounds on the bar and then lift it from here to here.
Yeah, not right as much.
Yeah.
And then, so that's part of that.
Yeah.
Fine. And then let's go through. Yeah, that's more of a minor, but it gets, you've all seen the guys with the bands on the biceps or so in the gym. And the question is, does it do much?
So yeah, look for flow restriction is basically, as Mike said, it's just like a little band where somebody would put it generally like kind of close to the origin of the muscle. So some muscles it's easier to do, some muscles it's quite hard to do. So like quads, you can kind of do that, or like leg extensions, bicep curls are a great one. And essentially what it's doing is it's causing a little bit of constriction of blood vessel that causes more. It's harder for oxygenated blood to get in, so that causes more metabolites to build up. It's essentially a hack for getting metabolites earlier in the set and with lighter weights. And so blood flow restriction can be a very good option for people who are maybe injured, who are having some joint pain, or who just have a very low strength level. And so they can use a lighter weight to kind of get that burn, get that pump. pretty limited injury risk. It's, very lightweight. And so yeah, it's something that could be like a little supplement to a training program or for certain people, but it's not the holy grail of muscle growth.
So then another question is always range of motion, partial reps, where does that fit in? And the answer as always is it depends. It's very straightforward. So first of all, range of motion is active range of motion, meaning yours. The active range of motion is basically when the antagonist is flexed, that's what I'm in. So let's say, when I'm doing chest flies, let's say, here my lats are flexed, right? So yeah, I can have the machine pull me into here, but it wouldn't do anything, right? So this is where my A1 ends, and then till here. So people have different abilities and so forth, but that's the game. Now, as to partial reps, there are some small studies that show that working in primarily lengthened position of the muscle causes more gains, right? But does it mean you should only train lengthened position? No. Okay. It depends on the exercise. So let's say if you're doing an incline, right? Well, that exercise is set up to be a stretch exercise. In the end, of course, you should work in lengthened position, right? And with dumbbells, there wouldn't be much work contracted, so that would be cut out. But in general, we should definitely also train in contracted position and not just.
Yeah, so in general, some of that research shows that the lengthened position can grow maybe a little bit more than the contracted, and sometimes it seems to be a little bit specific. So the lengthened might grow a little bit closer to the attachment, while the short position grow a little bit more towards like the origin. Meaning, if I was doing lengthened leg extensions, I might get a little bit more growth towards here, whereas if I was working really on the contracted position, might be a little bit more here. So, from a practical consideration, we have a trainee come in, they've never trained before. It's like, well, what's the first thing? I'm going to do lengthened partials with them, and just exclusively. No,
like I said, there's some exercises for certain muscle groups where it could be a benefit, but it's not like a major concern.
It's also like, bodybuilding, there is a skill component to it all. So it's it's you make it look skillful at least. So if somebody is really struggling to contract their pecs, they never get into a short position here, it would probably be like a pretty bad idea to exclusively focus on training in the lengthened position, just because one or two studies show that produces a little bit better muscle growth. So we want to train through a proper range of motion. We might even spend some time working on contracted partials, but it's just going to be dependent on the person. And I think everybody should cover the entire strength curve. It's something that Mike's been talking about for a long time.
So yeah, so that's and then we go to you're gonna get the slides anyways. So now sum it all up. So take home message training is so you should train the whole body 2 to 3 times during the week, compounds and single joint exercises. And execution is the key, right? So best written workout plan is not going to help you even if I wrote it, if the execution is trash, right? And 10 to 16 sets per muscle group over the week, that seems to be people. And the temptation is always to do more, especially if you get to the work when you have more energy, but that just becomes junk work. So to summarize, execution, mix of compound and single joints, 10 to 16 sets per muscle per week, 2 to 3 times. And the rep range, when we talk about, I would not go lower than 8, 25, somebody, that's what most people.
Yeah, and I think in terms of like volume, I think a lot can be accomplished with focusing on really good quality, keeping every set consistent, and then rather than trying to constantly do more sets, over time, if you're getting, you talk about this all the time, right? It's like people want to go up and weight all the time. There's so many different ways of progression, right? You can progress by going through a longer range of motion. You can progress by doing an extra rep. You can progress by doing an extra set.
Or simply just striving for the perfect round, right? And getting closer in that skill set. So you don't always have to increase the weight. And why do I offer this? Because when people are under the impression that every week they have to increase their weights, it's a huge mental stress. And it leads to micro cheating. So let's say you have a guy, first week, he's benching 50s, right? And everything's good. And then his coach says, you gotta bench 60s next week. So he's like, okay, but he flaps the elbows in. Now he travels less actually and does less work, even though he does more weight, right? So he actually hasn't progressed, right? And then he has to do 60s, 70s, and so on and so forth. And then I find that very stressful.
People get burned out, you know. And I think, like as you said, it's kind of like you're trying to improve that quality with time or something or anything else. So,
That's just so. If there was a sound issue, which I don't know of, but the people who bought the stream, they would get a download a link or a video within the 72 hours that has all of the sound sort of feel.
So outside the gym, like it's very easy. People can really focus on what you're doing in here over that hour, and that's definitely should be our focus. But there's 23 other hours in the day, and that's also going to influence the results that you get. So what are some of the big cornerstones that we're trying to think of? Okay, so nutrition, highly important. I want to cover that again. Rest. So if you're kind of always trying to head out and meet up with your friends and after you finish up work, grab a few drinks, now you're having 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night, but you're in here in the gym smashing it, well, you're probably not getting the best results that you could get.
So this might be an unpopular opinion, but overtraining the fitness world is extremely important. It usually means over partying, over drinking, and over being shit-faced. Because invariably people train like 4 or 5 hours a week, right? Most other sports do that in a day. Okay? So the training volume isn't really that much. So if somebody's not growing, I mean, unless you're like the last lumberjack from New York City or so, you're not doing much physical work. So there's no way you're not recouping from the hour of training. It just means that your lifestyle is, shall we say, not good.
Yeah, and I think something that there's some aspects kind of related to that. So it's like your body has a finite ability to deal with all of the stress that you have going on in your life. Okay, so yes, training is a stressor. Then you have the stress from being a dad, being a partner, being a manager in your workplace. So if you're allowing stress to consume your life, well then that's probably going to impact your results. So it's not, we all have stress in our lives, we can't eliminate it. We have to do some steps to kind of try to manage that. And basically, if you're in a very high stress environment, consistently, maybe don't come into the gym and hammer it quite so much. Maybe it's time to come in a good quality 30, 45 minutes. Next week, when things settle down a little bit, you can start attacking it again.
If you're newborn and you slept 2 hours that night, that might not be big for them.
Yeah.
Maybe just pause it 30 minutes to some hours. So after that, we're moving on to the second part, which is basically nutrition, aka protein. So walking, it's a free time. So I started out as always told, GFH became huge, right? That was like the priest, you remember that, eating KFC on the bubble in this huge rally, and then showing up at Mr. Olympia 30 weeks later looking great. People were just pounding food, and I fell victim to that too. Like I did a dirty walk, and Haagen-Dazs and pizza, whatever. And the first week it was fun. It became kind of a job. It was actually rather annoying. And at the peak, I was 255ish or whatever. But I was fat. It's not like it was right. I was strong-ish, but the time I had dieted down, a year had passed, sadly, and I was much the same way as the year before. Right? So all this eating and non-eating was just completely phenomenal. Right? So, despite what social media tells you, muscle simply doesn't grow that fast, right? And that's because of expansion, for sure. So, I hate to break it to you, but an intermediate trainee male at the very best we could go for is 3 pounds a month, right? Which annualized would still be 36, which is a lot. So we're permanently not. Women, the best half, that's it for everything goes well. So growing at about 30 grams, aka 1 ounce a day. Now that also means that you don't need a lot of sugars, right? Because you're just not building up that much muscle. Mind you, the body cannot really, in small instances, make new muscle cells. But it can make unlimited of fat cells, right? So that's why you have people that are 600 pounds fat, but even the biggest bodybuilders are only 3, right? So, shape it.
Yeah, so one of the analogies I like to use when I talk about bulking is like give yourself a long runway. So you imagine like a plane trying to take off with 12-foot runway, it's not going to go very far. You need to give yourself time to build momentum. So when I first started with Maik, one of the things that he really emphasized was starting a bulk from a nice, lean starting point.
I cannot. You must be as lean as can be, right? And the reason is that,
well, so as we bulk, we're going to gain some amount of body fat. That is just an inevitable aspect. Like we're in a surplus, and yes, we're gaining muscle. We're also going to gain a little bit of body fat. So something like 3-to-1 ratio would be absolutely excellent.
right.
For most people, it's probably closer to 2-to-1.
Yeah. So in a perfect universe, every extra calorie we eat goes to the muscle growth, and every calorie we don't eat. Sadly, the universe is not like that. You can think of what. So starting lean is critical because A, it's healthy. Lean up is always healthy. And secondly, it's more fun to train when you can still see feet. Right? And it's less stressful on the body. Also, muscle and fat, they fight for food and hormones. So the more and insulin, yes, so the more you carry, the more of the extra food will go, the extra fat. Now, testosterone and growth hormone get stuck like that, right? So you become a sumo wrestler over time.
So, psychologically as well, I think for a lot of people, especially if you're not starting off with a very muscular starting point, if you're somewhere like, 18, 20% body fat, which is maybe not in the obese range necessarily, but you are going to start bulking, you're after like a week or two, maybe you're gaining a little bit of body fat, muscle growth is very slow, so it's very hard to actually see a white grow muscle here. Correct. So over time, you're getting a lot of negative feedback because what you're seeing in the mirror is not the vision that you had for yourself.
Right.
Whereas start off eating,
It's also, again, it's healthy. And then, so like I said, the calorie surplus is sadly very small. So bulking, just to reiterate, does not mean go downstairs Dunkin' Donuts, clean them out, and then go to the Chick-fil-A place and clean those guys out. And that's only one meal, right? Because 300 calories, which is like 3/4 of a donut extra a day for a meal, that's really all you can use. Not saying that's all you can eat, but that's all you can use. Anything extra, you will store as non-food. Not muscle, sorry.
and so that's why we want to give ourselves as much time to kind of gradually increase our weight. And we're also going to use stuff like we're going to take pictures as a check-in. We're going to weigh ourselves regularly, so we're not going from week 1 we're at 180, and then by week 3, somehow we're at 186 or 190,
Yeah, so teachers I recommend same spot, same time, so the lighting is the same, whatever we prefer. Once a week, same with the weight, and then for the people who are can afford it or so inclined, you probably could do a DEXA after 8 to 10 weeks to see where you're at. If you have access to that, that might be worthwhile enterprise. But I mean, like I said, if you follow simple math and you have been working for, let's say, 4 months, and in those 4 months you have gained 12 to 15 pounds, you can pretty much pat yourself on the back because you did really, really well. Because that's all the max muscle you can gain, right? If you have gained 40 pounds, then sure, you're not fun eating, but it wasn't muscle. So
yeah. And so a very common question, everybody asks about mass building exercises. People think there's a special exercise to do to build mass. As we covered, there is no special exercise, it's simply a question of contracting tissue. Likewise, there's no mass building foods, it's simply a question of calorie content in those foods. So different people will respond a little bit differently to a calorie deficit or a surplus. It's possible to bulk by eating quite a lot of processed foods, but in general, we would want to still keep cornerstone of our diet quite healthy, and then supplement maybe some extra processed foods. I know Maik likes Haribo, gummy bears are.
Yeah. But like I said, since the surplus is not that great, I always tell a story. When I was swimming, the training was hard, the eating was easy because you just had to get calories in at all costs. Bodybuilding is the other way around. Training is relatively easy, eating is much harder.
Yeah, keeping on track. And so, basically, long story short, there are no mass building foods per se. We want to keep the bulk of our diet still pretty healthy, 80-90% of kind of the classic, fruits, veggies, lean meats, healthy fats, all that kind of stuff. And then it's perfectly fine to supplement, especially if you're a larger person who can have a larger surplus. Then it may be more appropriate to get in a little bit of extra food from those processed sources, simply because it's actually hard to just eat chicken, rice, and broccoli for 3.5, 4,000 calories per day.
But I would keep those at 15-20% at most.
Yeah.
And then just the nutritional breakdown, because that's interesting. People always think when you're bulking, you should eat more protein. That's not really the case, because the protein stays at 1 gram per pound of body weight to 2.2 for a kilo people. Because in the fat seminar we talked about dieting, protein works as an anti-catabolic, right? To keep on the muscle, so you need a little more. But bulking, by definition, you are not catabolic or anabolic from the extra food. So the extra calories come from carbohydrates and fats. So the fats, you want about 2 grams per pound of body weight. And then carbohydrates, I've seen all the way up to 8, 4 to 5 for a kilo people. They're easier to eat than protein, carbohydrates and fats, and they also help with longer performance.
Yeah, I think this is, in recent years, there's been this big demonization of carbohydrates, but they don't cause you to gain any more fat. And they should, theoretically, they will cause less fat storage than fat, and they do improve performance. So they keep your workouts good quality, and they're easier to consume, especially compared to fat sources. So in terms of the targets here, we have 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilo of protein, fat 0.5 to 1.5 grams per kilo, carbs 3 to 5, calories at 42 to 50 calories per kilogram. So that equates to about a 10 to 20% increase in calories. And what we're trying to aim for is a 0.25, 0.5% increase in body weight per week. So for most people, that looks at something like quarter pound, half a pound per week. It's going to be very difficult unless you're really gifted to get up to kind of a pound per week of solid muscle gain. And so we covered taking photos, weigh-ins. And so this is a common question that we get is recomp, so recomposition.
So, just to tell you some bodybuilding lore, all this crap started with the Colorado experiment. Takes the way out. First of all, it was not an experiment because it was one person. So Gabriel was one of the most gifted bodybuilders ever walked on the planet. He was so good that Arnold said, if I had to compete against the other, I would have quit and be a ski instructor in Austria. That guy won Mr. America at age 70. That's just not good. And 20 injuries. Long story short, he felt ill, tablets and so forth, lost a bunch of weight to the tune of 45 pounds, went to Colorado, trained with Buster Jones, and gained an insane amount of muscle mass in a very short period of time. Okay? So then people said, that's how you recall. No, that guy was a freak who regained old muscle mass that he already had before the accident and used the kitchen sink as opposed to supporting medications. Okay? So now us is a case of you would need a seminar, you would need if you were active. Okay?
So, recomp is just basically reducing body fat, gaining muscle, but staying in the same weight or kind of like similar weight. And like, if you're a novice, you can maybe get a little bit out of that. But for most people, you're just not going to make any meaningful results from doing that. But
Who's much fat, overly much muscle, just
so you're spitting phase, And as the training status advances, the likelihood just decreases. It's very. If you're somebody like Maik, it's going to be very difficult to try to be able to gain 10 pounds of muscle while losing 10 pounds of fat.
So next time I pops on the Instagram feed as a dad, extremely.
Next.
So then, since we're on bodybuilding, what about supplements? Vitamin S, steroids. So, first of all, I'm not a doctor. I don't know any bodybuilding. So don't take everything with 17 grains of salt. So, obviously steroids work, right? Anybody who watched NFL recently, so when working, they're actually not that needed because working is metabolic in nature. Now, the drugs help, of course, with protein synthesis, you recover quicker, nitrogen retention, and so on and so forth. One of the main mistakes that's being made when people bulk, they add a lot of hepatotoxin components, Ebola certain oils to the mix. And then if you have on a dirty bulk, the liver works really, really hard. And that can cause complications. And then also, so people go on a 20-week enhanced bulk. And by the way, even with supplements, a pound of muscle a week is what you can shoot for. So then they go on the cycle, then the cycle ends, and they start dying. So now there's two catabolic events in the body: suppressed endogenous testosterone and gamma calories. So these people lose all their gains. So that's the only way to go about this. Steroids actually way more helpful than their diet. Stay healthy, keeping on muscle. But like I said, they do work. They come with a lot of risks. I cannot make a decision for you. If you do so, make sure you're as informed as can be. But they do not make more sense to honor it. They just don't. Okay. So,
Mike, I think what I've always heard from you, qualified personnel.
yeah.
This is not for people who are, showing up in the gym. They're supposed to be hitting the gym 5 days a week. They're showing up 2 days, and
pizza for lunch and so on and so forth, and then trying to basically make up for sugar lifestyle with the addition of drugs. That happens a lot, and the consequences are very severe. People dying in their 30s. Like I said, qualified personnel. So that concludes this seminar. We want to give you a quick rundown. First of all, thank you for your attention. Muscle growth, 3 mechanisms.
Connected tension, metabolic stress, damage.
They have to be accomplished in the gym primarily by training and keeping tension by training, doing a mix of compounds and attention exercises. Execution is key. 10 to 15 or so sets per muscle group per week, which you should split up. And hitting each muscle, depending on how much time you're having, and so forth, 2 to 3 times a week. Right? nutritionally,
Nutritionally, we're trying to aim for like a small surplus, 200 to maybe 300 calorie surplus per day, depending on the person. And that's also going to be dependent on their weight. So, you know, if you're weighing in and you're rapidly gaining weight week after week after week, well, what's that telling you? It's telling you maybe you need a little bit smaller surplus. So, you know, you need to be on top of this.
right? And that's all we have for you guys. Thanks for your attention. You will have a video 48 hours or so. It's not up to me. And hope to see you next time. Thanks very much, guys. Thanks.